If you're headed to Yellowstone National Park, you absolutely cannot miss the Grand Prismatic Hot Spring. I'd heard about this before I went there for the first time, and I'd seen the pictures on the internet, but I was still totally unprepared for how incredible it is. It's like this enormous sun landed on Earth. Well, I guess it would be a very small sun, but it's a very large hot spring, and you get the idea. In fact, it's the largest hot spring in Yellowstone, and you won't want to miss it. But before you go there, you will want today's episode because I'm going to share everything that you need to know about visiting Grand Prismatic Spring, Wyoming. Hi, I'm James Ian, and I've written numerous guides and published several itineraries for Yellowstone National Park. Because Grand Prismatic Spring is one of the most popular attractions in the park, and because Yellowstone can get very crowded, and because when you go to see the spring can impact what you see, there's a surprising amount of things to consider. We're going to look at where to find the best views, the best time to go, how to get there, parking strategies, and more. If you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe right now. If you're listening somewhere else, follow my podcast to get the episodes as they come out. There are actually two main ways to see Grand Prismatic Spring, and we're going to look at both of them. Be sure to stay to the end where I'll share with you which of these is the one not to miss. Let's get to it.
Welcome to National Parks Collecting with James Ian. The national park expert. He is here to help you have the best national parks trips ever. Get tips, discover hidden gems, and learn all you need to know. This is your path to collecting national parks experiences, memories, and maybe even a stamp or two.
Let's start with the basics. What is Grand Prismatic Spring and what is all the fuss about? The spring is almost 250 to 350 feet. The Grand Prismatic Spring is the largest hot spring in the United States, and it's actually the third largest in the world. It's the biggest and brightest of the many colored pools or hot springs in Yellowstone National Park. It's bright blue, but this changes color throughout the year. The colors are really interesting. They're a result of microbes in the water, and they can change depending on the temperature of the water. So in the summer, the edges are more orange, and in the winter, they're usually a dark green. That's super cool, right? Where is Grand Prismatic Spring? The spring is located in the Midway Geyser Basin area of the park, which is on the western part of the northern loop of the Figure 8 Grand Loop Drive. If you're coming from West Yellowstone or the north, it's about 45 minutes away. You'll pass through Lower Geyser Basin first, and then you'll get to Midway Geyser Basin. For reference, Old Faithful is in the Upper Geyser Basin, which is about another 10 to 15 minutes further down the road if you're headed from West Yellowstone or the north. There are two ways to experience Grand Prismatic Spring. The first is the Boardwalk. The Midway Geyser Boardwalk goes around the edges of the giant hot spring. That gives you a close-up view. The other way to experience the hot springs is the Grand Prismatic Spring Overlook Trail, and this gives you a more panoramic, more aerial view of the springs. So let's look at the Boardwalk first. As I mentioned, it goes very close to the spring. It's a one-way loop. It's about 0.8 miles, and it's on the boardwalk. So when you start from the parking area, it crosses the Firestone River, and then it goes around the nearest edge of Grand Prismatic Spring. And this is a really good chance to see the colors up close. It also passes the huge Excelsior Geyser Crater, as well as the much smaller Turquoise Pool and Opal Pool. So there's more than just the Grand Prismatic Spring on that boardwalk. You can also see the hot spring water joining the Firehole River in this gush of steam, which I think is kind of cool. Is Grand Prismatic Spring dangerous? People ask me this sometimes. The answer is yes, like all of the hot springs in the park, which is why the boardwalk is there. So do not go off the boardwalk. You'll occasionally see videos of completely insane people who have ventured off the boardwalk. It's incredibly dangerous. There's a very thin crust, and if you go through, the water is scalding and will rip all of the flesh off your bones. You do not want that to happen. It will also damage the environment. Bad news all round, stick to the boardwalk. The spring is about 160 degrees Fahrenheit, so it may look tempting, but do not swim in it. Do not go off the boardwalk. It looks tempting, but it is not a swimming pool. So, practical things, parking. This is what you need to know, or one of the things that you need to know. You will need to park at the Midway Geyser Basin parking area for the boardwalk. Now, considering that Grand Prismatic Spring is the most famous and the most popular hot spring in Yellowstone, the parking area is surprisingly small. If the parking is full, there are large pullouts on the main Grand Loop Road, very close to the Midway Geyser Basin, where you can park. But because parking is a problem, you do need to think about timing. So when is the best time to go and walk along the boardwalk around Grand Prismatic Spring and Midway Geyser Basin? I recommend going there first thing because of parking. Now, first thing is not great for one other aspect, which is the mist. The steam or the mist hangs over the hot springs early in the morning, semi-obscuring them actually. And this is because the air is colder, and therefore there's a greater difference in the temperature between the hot spring and the air, and this results in the mist that forms over the water. This typically burns off later in the day, so from that perspective it's better to go later, but parking is a nightmare. So I think that the close-up view is generally okay in the morning, so that's why I recommend going there, so that you don't need to deal with the parking situation. Before we look at the Overlook, if you're watching this on my @National Parks Collecting YouTube channel and you haven't already, please like and subscribe below. It really does help. The other way to see Grand Prismatic Spring is from the Overlook. It's really nice seeing the colours up close on the boardwalk, but to see the classic view of the whole pools with those orange sun-like rays emanating from it and the edges of yellow and green and the brilliant dark blue colour and the whole shape and everything like a sort of swirls coming from a multicoloured sun, to see that view, then you really need to see them from above. You don't have a drone. Drones are illegal in the parks. You don't want to try that anyway. So the option is to see them from the Overlook. To do that, you will need to take the Grand Prismatic Spring Overlook Trail. As I mentioned, this gives you the kind of semi-aerial view. It's the classic view that you'll see in the photos. The trail was surprisingly only opened in 2018. Prior to that, people just used to scramble up the hill to get the view. Now, obviously that wasn't that great, so we're very lucky that the National Park Service put in this trail. It's 1.2 miles. It's easy though, if you have some mobility. It's mostly flat. There is a bit of an uphill section just to get to the Overlook at the end. The trail starts from the Fairy Falls trailhead, and for the most of the trail, it is actually on the Fairy Falls trail. The trailhead there's a parking lot there. It's about a mile south of the Midway Geyser parking area. And the parking lot is a little more reasonably sized. It does still fill up though, but you've got a little bit of a better chance of getting a parking there. From the parking lot, you just follow the crowds along this white flat dirt path. It's very easy to see and follow. Grand Prismatic Spring is off in the distance to your right, but you actually can't see it until you get to the Overlook. And then after about 0.4 miles, you'll see a small sign on the left that points uphill, and this is the small uphill section that takes you to the actual Overlook. It's a side loop off the Fairy Falls trail. It's easy to see. Most people will be coming that way. So take the turn off to the left, and then you'll start to climb a little bit. I was very lucky. I saw a fox there that followed me along the trail, called it my fox. It's very fun, very cute. In the distance, not getting too close, but it was very cool. You may or may not see my fox there. And then it's just 0.2 miles. It's pretty gradual climb, but it does get a little bit steep in parts, so you do need to be aware of your mobility, but for most people it's pretty easily manageable. It's considered an easy trail. It can be a little slippery though, so I do recommend wearing proper hiking shoes. And then at the top, there's a small viewing platform, and this is where you get these incredible views of Grand Prismatic Spring. Now, it's not that large a viewing platform, and it is a popular spot, so it will often be pretty crowded, but when I've been there, people have been pretty good about taking turns so that you can take your photos and they have their photos taken, and then you swap out, take other people's photos. It's a nice festive feeling and environment, typically, when I've been there anyway. So a quick summary of the trail to the Grand Prismatic Spring, the details. It's rated easy to moderate. As I mentioned, it's only 0.6 miles each way, so 1.2 miles return. The first 0.4 miles is flat. The last 0.2 miles is a little bit steep. And then if you want, you can actually continue on to Fairy Falls itself. The Fairy Falls trail is 2.5 miles each way. The elevation gain is 101 feet. And it takes about 20 minutes to walk to the Overlook, spend some time there, and then another 20 minutes back. So maybe like an hour in total. If you decide to continue on to Fairy Falls, then the whole Fairy Falls trail takes about 2.5 to 3 hours. From the Overlook, you have two options once you've had your fill. Most people go back the same way they came to the parking lot. That's fine. But if you want to go on to Fairy Falls, rather than backtracking to the main trail, you can just keep going. It's a side loop off the Fairy Falls trail. So then you just continue along, you'll hit the Fairy Falls trail, and then you turn left to continue on to the falls. The other option is to go to Fairy Falls first and then hit the Overlook on the way back. Both options are possible. If you do decide to go into Fairy Falls, it's about another half a mile along, and then you'll get to a sign to Fairy Falls, and then you turn left and follow the signs, and then it's another 1.6 miles to the falls. The trail's mostly flat, and it goes through some lodgepole pine forest. When you get there, Fairy Falls, there are some of the tallest waterfalls in the park. They're very pretty, 197 feet tall, and it's a really lovely spot for a picnic lunch. You can then continue on another 0.75 miles, more or less, to Imperial Geyser, and then come back the same way. So, what's the best time of day to go to the Overlook? It may be tempting to go there early to beat the crowds, as I recommended for the Boardwalk, but this is one of those places that actually doesn't pay off because, as I mentioned, the spring is often covered in mist in the morning when the temperature difference between the pools and the air is at its greatest, and the mist can often partially or even almost fully obscure the views of the pool from the Overlook. You can see the springs and the colour from the Boardwalk not too bad even when there's mist, but to see the view from above, if they're completely obscured in mist, it's kind of not worth going. That's why I recommend going in the afternoon, even though that is when the crowds are the largest, and even though that is when you're going to have to struggle the most to get a parking spot. So I do recommend waiting. One option, if you wanted to go in the morning, is to hike to Fairy Falls first, and then hit the Overlook on the way back when it's a little bit later in the day and the mist has had more chance to burn off. You may find yourself waiting for someone to leave before you can get a parking spot. The other thing to be aware of is the trail does close for part of the year. The trail is actually in the bear management area, so it's closed from March through Memorial Day typically. Now, the park's Grand Loop Road is actually closed for the winter through May typically, so they overlap. It's not that impactful. So generally the trail's open from late May to early November. That can vary depending on when the snow comes in and when it starts to block the road. So if you're planning to go in late spring or the fall, I recommend checking the park's website for road closures just to make sure that they're not going to impact your ability to get there. Now, parking for the Grand Prismatic Spring Overlook Trail, as I mentioned, is the Fairy Falls parking lot, not the Grand Prismatic Springs or the Midway Geyser Basin parking lot. That one is for the Boardwalk, which is about a mile away, and there is no trail from the Grand Prismatic Springs parking area to the Overlook Trail, so you do need to drive from one to the other. The Fairy Falls parking lot is larger than the Midway Geyser Basin parking lot, but the trail is very popular and it does get full. You can check the park's website for current parking conditions, but I recommend just taking your chances. You may need to circle the parking lot before you find a space as someone else leaves, but just be patient, keep driving around until you see someone heading to their car and then follow them. Don't be creepy about it, but you know what I mean. One thing to note though, and this is a bit of a downside if you've got an RV, is that RVs, buses and trailers are not allowed in this parking lot. So if you do, then really the only option is the long, more than a mile walk from the Midway Geyser Basin parking lot to get to the trailhead. But it's along the main road. As I mentioned, there's no trails. So it's really not ideal and I don't recommend it. But if you have an RV trailer and you really want to see the view, that's probably the only option you have. So which of these, the Boardwalk or the Overlook, is the best? Good question. Stay to the end to hear my verdict, but the chances are you don't want to have to choose. And in fact, you don't, if you plan it right. It's complicated by the fact that the parking says morning and the mist says afternoon, so How can you plan around this? This is just one of the things that I took into account when I created my Yellowstone itineraries. There are 1, 2, 3, and 4-day options. And Grand Prismatic Spring is included in all of them because it is one of the real highlights of the park. But the 3 and the 4-day itineraries have a little bit more flexibility in timing built in, so we're able to adapt them around those problems. Of course, timing and parking are just 2 of the things that go into planning a trip to Yellowstone. There are a lot more. The park is huge. There's loads to see and do. The park is really popular, so it can be crowded. Timing is key, and it can be really difficult to know exactly what to do and when. All of these things, plus some built-in flexibility with different options at the same times of days in the same parts of the park so that you have some choices built in. These are all things that I considered. And you can find the link to the Yellowstone Itineraries page at the top of the description box below. But we can take a quick walkthrough right now. The itineraries include a park overview and some key information at the beginning, and then there's a detailed schedule for each day, and then they break down into all of the details that you need. So there's hiking descriptions and maps, driving directions and maps. There's the alternate activities in the same part of the park. There's key viewpoints. There's tips, timings, and all of the information that you need. With one of these itineraries, you'll know exactly what to do and when, and how to connect them all in a way that makes the most sense so that you're in the right place at the right time. Without this itinerary, people often find themselves struggling how to coordinate everything so that they are in the right place at the right time, and they get to do and see all that they want in the time that they have available. The itineraries help take away the overwhelm, and they just give you all of the information that you need in one spot. You can take them as a plug and play. Many people also just take all of the information and tweak them into a little bit more of their own itinerary. Both of those options are perfectly fine, of course. The itineraries have all that you need to do that. Just follow the links in the show notes below. Now, as promised, which of these 2 ways to visit Grand Prismatic Spring is the one that you don't want to miss out on no matter what? In my opinion, if you only have time for one, the Grand Prismatic Hot Springs Overlook is the absolute thing not to be missed. The Overlook provides a much better view of Grand Prismatic Spring than the Boardwalk. So if you're short for time and you have to choose between the 2, you absolutely should choose the Overlook, in my opinion. You'll probably have a chance to get close to other coloured springs, so it wouldn't be too terrible to skip the Boardwalk if you're short on time, but it would be a real shame to miss the view from the Overlook so you can see the shape and the colors and all the surrounding area. It's so cool. If you want help planning your trip, check the links in the description box below. There's a bunch of planning and booking resources that you can use to plan and book your trip. And keep watching my videos to get even more help so that you can have the best national parks vacation ever. And if you want to get notified about the next episode, subscribe and click below.